All right, we're on. I'm gonna do a little check, make sure that my live stream's working. So hang in there, team. We are on. All right. Got a little bit of a delay by the looks, but it's a semi-live stream. So yeah, welcome to a little image review I did. So a bunch of people have sent in some images, and we're going to go through those. I'm going to give some feedback. So the thing with photography is there's no wrong or right way to do anything. So I can give you my perspective on things. Maybe it might be helpful. Hopefully there's a few things you can take on. But yeah, everyone's got their own style. So like I say, no wrong or right way, but we will get into it. So we've got 10 people who have sent some images in. First one we have is Alexander. So these are his 3 images here. So this first one's a really cool water shot. He's done really well. Shot at 135 mil at 5.6. So it's quite a low aperture for a longer lens shot, but looks like he's nailed the focus. Like the focus is perfectly just on this lip. So pretty risky shot, but he pulled it off. So that's epic. I like to take risks from time to time. Also, I usually take risks when the waves are a bit worse because I feel like if you blow it, then it's not a big deal. But he's did it on this nice crisp day, and he's nailed that. So that's amazing. So I've got a few little notes here. So with this one in particular, I feel like positioning maybe could have helped out a little bit. It's a bit hard when you're shooting in the water because in the water it's very difficult to change your positioning quickly. Like you're stuck there and a wave pops up, and if you're at a reef break or something like that, it would be a little bit easier. But I just feel if he was in a little bit further, it might eliminate this kind of all the shoulder reaction, so you just kind of get like a little bit of a cleaner wave. And then we've got all this whitewash here, so if it was in a little bit further as well, you probably wouldn't see so much, and that would be a little bit less distracting. I think the processing looks really nice. I would probably push it a little bit harder. So these are just what have we got here? Yeah, these are JPEGs that we've got here. So it's not quite the same as processing raw, but one thing I like to mess with a lot is the whites and the blacks. So if you hold the Option key down and then you move the whites up, you'll see the screen's gone black. But as you move it up and up and up, eventually you'll see little white dots coming in, and they're a lot. So what that's showing is those are things that are clipping in the image. So you can see there's no information left there at all in the whites. So we wouldn't go that extreme, but we'll just go up to show you. So you can see here there's just these tiny little bits of whitewash up here are clipping. But that's totally fine. The whitewash is not a lot of info, so we can push those up a little bit. And then you can do the same things with the blacks. So I usually bring the blacks down. So what that's doing is putting more, like darker into the shadows. And same thing, you can see a little bit is showing in the around the lip area here. We're losing the black clipping, but I like to bring it in maybe just till it starts to clip. And what I find that does is it just kind of gives you like a lot crisper image. So if we look at the before and the after there, it's just like a little bit of a slightly crisper pop there. All right, but yeah, I really like that photo. I can't believe how well he's nailed that focus on the lip. That looks unreal. So what do we got? So this is his next shot. This is a really cool water shot as well. Sunrise, sunset, that would be sunset where I live. But what I find when you're shooting like at sunrise and sunset, it can be quite difficult because they've got sort of mixed lighting. So the sky is, got different lighting to actually on the wave, because the wave sort of still doesn't have direct lighting on it. You can see like a little bit of reflection from the color on the horizon coming up. But the little white balance picker can be really handy here. So generally you want to put that on something that's neutral. So the spray and the whitewash is usually something that's supposed to be pretty neutral. So if you click somewhere on the whitewash, for example, then that'll give you more of a like a neutral white balance. And if it's, in this instance, it's made everything like a lot warmer, which is great because it's, you know, it's sunrise and you want everything to look super warm, so you can see the difference that's made. So from there, it's kind of like quite cool. That's probably what I would sort of have it like a little bit warmer like that. I like to, if I've shot at sunrise or at sunset and you've got like a nice color in the sky, it's nice to accentuate that. So I would probably bring the exposure up on that a little as well. And then same thing, do that same thing with the whites and the blacks. We can just sort of check and see how far we can push that. Bring the whites a little bit up. So it's just sort of making it, pushing the, kind of like, gives it a little bit more pop, doing the, bringing the whites up and bringing the blacks down. So there's already quite a lot of blacks in there, but we'll bring that down a touch. So then the difference that has made, it's just kind of like a little bit poppier, a little brighter overall, but we haven't lost any of that information. I quite like this this little blur that he's got going on here. So you get that in the water by shooting quite low. It's an interesting one because the blur sort of, you know, really gives you the vibe that he's just above the water. But without that blur, maybe it could be a slightly cleaner image. But yeah, it's a tricky one. It's sort of you know, up to the artist how they create. For me, I really like to shoot low like this when I'm shooting into the sun, because then you get like all the reflections off the water in front of you, and you get like amazing little bokeh dots. So at that time, that's something that I really would shoot, like try and shoot quite low, just dip the front of the port even a little bit into the water. In this instance, yeah, I'm not too sure. It looks cool with it. It will probably look cool without it as well. All right. So we've got another little, this is really, really clean, amazing little mini wave we've got there from Alex. This one, his positioning, like the angle is perfect, like with the you know, like the crest of the lip is like framed perfectly. You can see it really nicely against the sky. Could be a little bit closer. Again, positioning in the water is pretty tricky, but in an ideal situation, I would probably like to be like a little bit closer on this one. We've got a little few distracting elements on the side here. It's kind of like the lump in the wave, and then a couple of trees peeking up there. So if you're a little bit closer, you know, you may not have those elements, or depending on what sensor size you've got going on. Like I shoot with A7 III in the water, so that's got a 42 meg sensor. So there's a bit of room to crop within that. So if this was a shot that I'd taken on the A7 III, I'd probably crop it a little bit like that. So that way, eliminate those distractions out of the side there. The kind of like the lump and the wave and the tree. And we'll buoy ourselves in a little bit closer just onto the action. And I quite like to have a bit more space like above the wave than below. Kind of have a bit of breathing room up top here. So this one as well, I think you could probably push a little bit harder on the processing and bring in some black. So I don't always hold the option key down and sort of check, you know, like where it's at exactly. I just sort of like look to my eye usually. And I think some blacks there. Even bringing the highlights down. Again, this is a JPEG, so we're not getting as much information out of it as we would with the RAW, but I feel like bringing the highlights down a little bit. So we're trying to get a bit more color out of that sky, and maybe just bring in like the contrast up overall. So when you bring the contrast up, generally you're going to get a little more color in it as well. Yeah, that's looking really nice. The dehaze slider is kind of like some sort of magic AI slider, which can be quite fun to use. So it's sort of adding contrast in different zones in the image. So we'll give that a little try there and see how that looks. It's definitely feeling the dehaze. I'm liking it. Maybe pump up the exposure a teeny little bit. Then if we look at the before and after on that, see, I think that extra processing just gave it like a little bit more of a pop, a little bit more color. but it, you know, it hasn't changed like the exposure too much. It's sort of just made things pop a little bit more. So, and then that's before with the before the crop. But yeah, it's an epic little mini. I love how he's composed that super nicely with the lip going through the sky there. So nice work, Alex. All right, we'll move it on to Diego. All right, Diego's got a couple of cool early morning shots. Diego lives in my town in Mount Maunganui, so gotta get up early for these vibes. So this water shot's really cool. So this is he sent me the raw and the JPEGs, which is really handy, so you can kind of see how the processing is done. So that's Diego's finished one there, the JPEG compared to the raw. It's got really cool like bokeh coming off. He's focused in on this little bit of water in the foreground. Really cool bokeh going on forward and back from that. He shot that at f2.8, so like a nice low aperture, so that sort of gives you a really cool fall off. Water details always look really, really nice at a low aperture, I think. Could have even focused maybe like a little bit closer in here. It kind of depends on what the minimum focusing distance of the lens you're using is, but basically the closer you focus here, the bigger your sun will end up, because the sun ends up being more and more out of focus, so it ends up just being one big bokeh ball. So that could be one way that can make things a little bit bigger. Diego's got some pretty wild sort of sun flares going on here. So I don't really know what to call these things. That they're caused by having water droplets on your port, and they look really cool. I feel they're kind of like a cross between a flare and a bokeh somehow. But I feel in this instance there's maybe too many of them, and it could be a little bit overbearing. It is a really cool effect, but I feel if maybe there was just sort of like one or two drops on the port, and I usually you can sort of drop them on yourselves. I mean, often they'll just happen, you know, organically. They just sort of end up where they end up. But I like to sort of keep the port clean, and then if I was going to drop a few on, I might drop them around the edges. So there might be like one on the corner here and one on the corner, you know, like more away from the main subject. And then they just sort of add like a little bit more of a organic feel to the image. The sun, so this was the exposure that Diego shot with a raw. And when you're shooting direct into the sun like that, it's probably better to try and shoot it as a little bit darker, because you'll find that this is shot at 100 ISO, and then you'll find if you shoot dark and you're shot at low ISO, you can pull a lot of detail out of the darks, but it's really, really hard to get detail out of that, out of the blowing out sun there. So Diego's done pretty well on his edited one, but yeah, you end up with like, you don't really get that nice gradient if you've sort of had to pull it back. And also, if you shoot real dark, you might actually be able to get like a little bit of detail in the sun as well, where it's pretty unfortunate in New Zealand. Our sun is so powerful here. If you go to places like Bali, you can shoot a sunrise, or if you go see sunset in Bali, you can like look directly at the sun. You can get like a nice super orange ball, but in New Zealand, it's it's super, super powerful. So yeah, I think shooting dark on that one probably pretty handy. And then the horizon line, you probably got like, these are probably, you know, a little bit of wave action or whatever. But for the horizon, I would probably try, and even if this wasn't actually how it looked on the day, I'd try and straighten it up so both sides are pretty equal there. Put that in the middle. Yeah, and then I feel like that horizon line looks a little straighter. He's done really well. He's chucked the sun on the third. I really like it. Nice one. So we're moving on to the next one. So we got a little couple of surfers going out early morning, and then this is Diego's. Yeah, that's his JPEG that is processed. So he's throwing a little more pink in there, which is pretty cool. Again, with that sun, it's it's pretty difficult to bring that back. probably would have shot that a bit darker as well, maybe, and then just try to bring it up in post, because anything you're shooting directly into the sun like that's going to be shot at your lowest ISO at like 100 ISO. So that way you've got heaps of information in the shadows and in the dark areas that you can bring everything up, and you'll still be able to retain a little bit more info. Or you could go like super dreamy. See some people, they just sort of will blow out the whole sky, which can look quite cool. I wonder what would happen. Say if you exposed it right up, and then you end up with something. Even you can take the highlights, bring the highlights up, just kind of get something that's like a little bit dreamy. It's probably not really my style, but I have seen some people that do that really well. So that could be another option. So again, this must be in Diego's housing, and he's got like a few little water droplets on the port by the look. You end up with these odd little, I don't know if they're from sensor dots or what they are, but in the bokeh you end up with these kind of like odd little marks on it. So you can easily just take those out. So I just give that, this is the spot removal tool. So you can just give that a little rub over. So just all that is doing is just bringing the information from there, popping it on there, and that's in the healing mode. So it's sort of using its AI around the edges to try and match things up a little bit. And then we'll do that little spot there. And that just gives like a little bit cleaner image. So that was it before, that was it after. But yeah, really cool shot. I'm digging it. It's done well. And then Diego's third one. This is Diego's edited file here. So this is, I really like this shot. It's cool. This is the main beach in Mount Maunganui, where I live and Diego lives. And it gets real. It's a small little beach, and it's really popular, and it gets pretty crazy busy. And he's done an epic job here of capturing the chaos and giving the feeling what it's like to surf at the main beach. 3 guys on every wave, a couple of learners in the way down the front here. So this processing is quite interesting. It's quite it's shot at sunset. It's got that. So this is the raw file here, and then this is Diego's finished one. Strong. Looks like he's kind of throwing quite a lot of pink at it, which I quite like. I don't know if it feels. I think I would probably even warm it up a little bit more with like a little bit more yellow. I'm just working on Diego's JPEG rather than starting from scratch on the raw. And then because everyone is silhouettes anyway, as soon as a surfer in the frame is like a silhouette, I like to just throw like a bunch of black at it to kind of give the whole image like a little bit more contrast, because you're not really losing anything from the surfer at all. There's no info there anyway. So I feel like if they're a silhouette, you might as well embrace it and just throw like a bunch of blacks at it. So we can hold down the Option key, see if we're losing anything. Actually got no black clipping yet. And then we could bring the whites up again a little bit. Well, there's already some white clipping, so we won't push that too far. And then it looks like Diego's brought maybe like a little color gradient in from the side here to accentuate that sort of sunset vibe. And yeah, I like that. I often do that myself as well. I think it looks pretty cool. Kind of gives you a real sort of glow in the corner. So that was Diego's. That was my sort of slight tweak on his edit. I feel like adding the extra blacks to it just took a little bit of the haze out of it, and yeah, made things look like a little bit crisper. And then if we wanted to see what it was like without changing the white balance, just with changing the blacks, that was before, and then that was adding a little bit extra. I think Diego's done a little crop here. He's cropped out the fourth guy on that wave. He's only half there, which is fair enough. There's 3 people definitely give the idea of what it's like to be there. I would probably maybe go a little bit further. I don't really like having anything that's a little bit busy too close to the edge of the frame. So this little bit where the whitewash finishes here, I'd probably get rid of that. There's not really anything that we're going to lose out of this left-hand side if we crop it up that way. Oh, we lost one person's head, but there's enough people there for the vibe. So yeah, I feel like that makes it like a little bit less distracting down the bottom there. Then it just sort of goes off the frame. But yeah, it's cool. Good vibes. Definitely, if you come to Mount Maunganui where I live and you want to go for a surf at the main beach, that's what you can expect. So he's done a great job of capturing the vibe there. All right, then we have Josh. That shot is epic. Really, really cool. That's one of the photos that I wish that I took myself. Again, he's got quite a done really well with like the composition. They've got no metadata there, so we can't really see how it was shot at. But yeah, composition is really sick with the wave. The backdrop looks epic. I feel like that's the East Coast. Anyway, we won't go too far into that. But what we've got here is we've kind of got mixed lighting. So the wave and the whitewash, everything here looks like the sun's already gone down. There's like still a little bit of glow coming from the horizon behind. And then the background looks like it still sort of has some actual direct sunlight on it. Again, what you can do, I feel like it's made the shadow area look like a little bit blue. So I would go into some of this whitewash here, which is supposed to be white, and then just give that a little click, and then that will just warm up the whole vibe there. So it definitely gives it like a lot more of a sunset sort of look to it. So other things I'd do would probably be add a little bit extra blacks to it, just to feel like it could. Oops, that's not black, that's saturation. Rookie. Blacks, let's have a look at that. So yeah, we didn't have any black clipping yet, so I'm just going to do that by eye. Like maybe the white balance warmed it up a little bit too much. So we just bring that down. I would never ever just trust the eyedropper tool and take that as gospel. You want to sort of, you know, do your own little vibe on it. I feel like it's ended up a little bit, it's still a little bit green, which is, so we'll bring the reds. So if something ends up looking a little bit green, you just throw the opposite in the white balance at it. So if you throw red at it, it'll take that green tinge away, but you just bring that up until you can see red, and then you just end up with like a nice clean sort of neutral look. Probably just check a little bit more contrast at that as well. Maybe bring the exposure up a tiny bit. So when you bring the exposure up, you lose like a little bit of color out of the sky. So because the wave is in the shade and then the sky's in the sun, then it's quite hard to balance the two. So I'll often just use like a little graduated filter. So this is a graduated filter there. Click on that. Then I'll zero out all the settings by double clicking on effect. And then if you bring the exposure down a teeny little bit, maybe the highlights down a teeny little bit, and then we drag that gradient down, you just get like a little bit more detail out of the sky. And then once it's on there, you can adjust it. So if you want to bring the exposure down more, you could. You can also do things if you wanted to warm the sky up a little bit more to give it a bit more of that sunsetty sort of vibe. You could just warm that up slightly. Yeah, that's looking real nice. So with the, I love how this headland, he's composed this so nicely, how the headland sort of drops off here. If I have something where I've got like a little hill coming down like this, and then sort of spiking up again, I don't know why, but I always like to make it look like it goes off into infinity there. So bring that down a little bit. Bring that up to keep that on the third. That's, yeah, really, really well composed. Really cool. and we'll crop that, and then I feel like it sort of makes the backdrop look like maybe it could be like a giant island, you know, like it's going to go back down into the water there on the side. I feel like we could maybe even throw a little bit more saturation this shot. Nice. So then if we have a look at Josh's original, like that, and then we just sort of warmed the whole thing up overall, made it, because when I first look at this, I didn't really realize how blue it looked, but once you compare it to something that's a bit more neutral looking, it ends up looking quite blue. But yes, sick shot overall. I'm hyped on that one. It's amazing. All right, the next one. So we've got a couple of buddies going out for a surf. It's a cool little moment got going on there. I like the little look back's cool. I presume there's a couple of Josh's pals. It would be nice if there was like a set break in here, but I mean, I don't know how hard you can push your friendship of your friends and asking them to wait around till a set comes, when the waves are pumping. What you can do though is, so if your buddies were walking from left to right through the frame, is you can kind of move with them. So you're moving yourself, you're kind of keeping them the position, and then sort of hope something pops up in the meantime before they paddle out. I'll often, if someone's sort of walking out to the surf, I'll often be running around like a sniper trying to like work some angles to try and get them in the foreground where I want them. And if they're moving up, you've got to move a lot as well. So on this one, what do we got? I'd probably throw a little bit more contrast at it. It's quite blue, but I feel like it's cold. He's got the hood on. Blue kind of is that cold vibe. So I feel like it's all good. I probably wouldn't really mess with that too much. Maybe bring the exposure up a little bit. But I feel like the grass, New Zealand grass is really intense. New Zealand grass sort of always comes up looking like super fluoro in any images. So if you go down to the HSL panel, so HSL stands for hue, saturation, and luminance. So you've got all these different sliders here. So you can effectively change the saturation of one color in your image. So what we do is we get this little tool here, we select that, and then we click on the grass. And then if we bring that down, click on it, and then slide your mouse down, you'll see the saturation of the greens going down. So you can take them all away if you wanted to. Generally, New Zealand grass is a combination of green and yellow. This one's got a little bit of yellow. You can see the yellow slider moving slightly, but it's mostly the green. So I wouldn't really desatch the green too much, but I would just make the green so it wasn't sort of overpowering. But yeah, overall, it's a cool vibe. I like it. I didn't really mess with things too much. That was Josh's original. That was my slightly desatched green. Maybe even would bring that exposure up a teeny little bit more. But yeah, cool vibe for sure. All right, moving along. And we have a cool drone shot. It's a real nice perspective. Got a nice little peak here. I guess it's mostly a left-hander, but I feel like the right-hander, we could maybe fool people a little bit by cropping this extra little closeout bit off maybe. Drone images are a little bit tough to crop because they don't really come with like a whole heap of pixels with a drone generally. So you don't really want to go cropping too much out of a drone photo. But that's if you want to print it. So if you just wanted to jam it on Instagram or whatever, then crop to your heart's content. So this one, say if we brought it down like that, that will sort of eliminate that little bit of a closeout on the right. Maybe bring that up. So then you kind of got some rough sort of third lines going on with the the wave and that next. I love that next swell coming in. That looks really cool. So like that. So then it kind of selling the dream that it's a perfect peak rather than a good left with the closey out right. I feel like the blues are maybe a little intense on this one. So I wonder even if we warmed it up slightly, that would kind of calm those blues down. Yeah, give it slightly more of a natural look. Josh has done really well with the height of his drone, how he doesn't have like the ocean just sort of goes out to infinity. You know, there's no horizon line, and he's high enough to see these, get nice separation between these soil lines. He's done real well on positioning there, and I really like it. You can see a couple of surfers there. If you give that, you know, to give some scale, because if you first looked at that, that could be like, you know, 1 to 2 foot wave, but he's got these surfers in here, and you're like, hey, that's actually pretty good size. So I find that drone photos, even the DNGs, which are kind of their version of the RAWs that come out of drones, I find that drone photos are always really saturated. I guess that's what people like from drones. They want the, you know, most people, I guess, want a lot of saturation in the images, but I feel to tie in with other imagery, then it could be nice to sort of tone that down a little bit. So I always end up taking saturation out of my any drone photos. So I would just click on that blue, maybe bring that down a little bit. The drone shots are always quite contrasty as well. I don't know if we really take anything away from there, but yeah, I'm kind of feeling it. And then up here, I'm not sure if this is something that Josh has done, but it looks like there's a little bit of extra light coming from this side here. Maybe that's where the sun's position. I'm not too sure. If Josh has done that himself, he's done a good job, convincing job there. But we could maybe accentuate that even a little bit more. So we'll do another graduated filter. We'll just zero that out. Bring the warmth up a little bit, and then drag that over from the side. So once you got it on there, then you can move the sliders and get that how you want it. I feel like that's Josh's original. That was our little re-edit on it. Yeah, cool perspective. I like Josh's little 3 selections there. He's got things covered. He's got an aerial. He's got a epic lineup, pulled back lineup, and some sort of lifestyle vibes. So we might move it along. All right, there's a few difficult names here. I presume that's Wani, but don't quote me on that. Hopefully I'm not mispronouncing your name. So first up, it's got a really cool slow shutter vibe going on. I think this is the beach, kind of like a little shorey coming into the beach. The backdrop blurred off. He's done really well. So slow shutter shots are very difficult. He shot this one at half a second, so it's really slow. But I would presume he's got like a nice smooth tripod going on. If he's done this with his hands only, he's a magician. But yeah, it's come up really cool. Looks like a great shot. So to get that slow shutter speed of half a second, he's had to shoot at f/22. And when you shoot at a high aperture like that, you'll find if I shot at an aperture this high, I would take like half an hour cleaning up the dust spots. But I'm not sure if he's cleaned them up, but there's a couple that have snuck in there. Really. A couple of dust spots. So what that is just a little bit of dust on your sensor. So you could try and fix those in Lightroom with the spot removal tool. Lightroom's a little bit niggly for this. I would probably do it in Photoshop, but we'll just do it real quick. To demonstrate. Another little one there. Lightroom just kind of randomly picks where it wants it, so sometimes you got to kind of like try and line it up. Oh, that one looks terrible. Yeah, I think this is probably something you need to do. You need to do in Photoshop. It might be a little bit beyond Lightroom. But one thing you could do instead of having to shoot at f22 to be able to shoot a slow shutter speed like that is get a neutral density filter. Shoot these shots, especially if you're shooting from the land. Neutral density filter is sweet. You can just have it screwed on, or there's ones you can drop on instead. And then when it decide you don't want to be shooting with neutral density filter, you can take it out. If you're shooting in a housing, it's a big commitment to shoot with a neutral density filter because you're kind of stuck with it. And then if things get brighter, you don't want to shoot slow shutter speed anymore. Then it can be a little bit tough. I really like the composition you just got here. I like that you can see the beach. That's really cool. What can look really awesome for the slow shutter shots is if you shoot them quite tight. Obviously, this is a different sort of vibe. I really like this vibe, but when you shoot a slow shutter like a little bit tighter like that, then you can really see like the contours of the wave. And let's say if it was shot tighter like that, then there's, as far as like an artistic sort of a print goes, it's a little bit more minimal. You know, there's not so much going on, a little less in the way of distractions. But as your shots are really cool as well. As far as the processing goes, I feel like it's a little bit green overall. So we can get this spot white balance tool as well. We'll just pop it onto the whitewash there and see what that does. Oh yeah, that brought it down to like a little bit bluer. And yeah, it definitely was feeling that it was green because it's bumped up the red, the tint a little bit to red. I would probably bring that down slightly because I feel like I can see some red. And then maybe bring the temperature down. So then we get like a real nice blue texture. And the whitewash still looks like nice and white. So overall, it's got a really nice neutral tone to it. But that way, that was before, you can see it's quite green. And then I feel like, yeah, the blue, maybe the red's a little bit too intense still. Down slightly. Yeah, that looks cool. Like it. So you can see there's quite a lot of light spilling out from the left of the frame. You could sort of accentuate that. It's even blowing some parts out, but you could kind of embrace it and maybe throw like a little yellow graduated filter from that side and see what that does. Let's make things a little bit green, so maybe yellow and red. How does that look? So that's without it. That's with it. Yeah, so it kind of warms up that one corner. It really gives you a feeling that the sun's coming up from that side. I'd probably I find this little whitewash bit here a little bit distracting. It's just distracting. So we could have a look at cropping that out. I'll lift a teeny little bit in. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit cleaner without that. But yeah, overall cool shot. Alay's done really well with that slow shutter pan for sure. Also before, that was a little rear there. All right, we're moving along. So now we've got a moody water shot. This is really cool. Yes, give a nice sort of like solitary sort of a feel to it. Make a cool print, I think. If I'm shooting with a moody sky, I find having like the subject and the horizon line like a little bit lower in the frame can make the sky feel like a little bit bigger. So obviously if you shot with more sky, and it's going to make it bigger. But even if we just cropped it a little, say if we chuck the surfer on the third, this will give you a bit more of an idea of what it might look like if it was shot with a bigger sky. Yeah, it just makes like the sky feel bigger overall, having that extra room above. I'll probably even this little dark zone here. Like I said, I don't really like having things that are distracting on the edge of the frame, so I'd probably even go a little bit tighter on that. surfer in the middle. Yeah, I think that's probably how I would have tried to have shot that one. Just accentuate that sky by putting a lot more sky in the frame and making it a lot moodier. It's quite blue, but I feel like it's actually quite blue in the sky. You can see like quite a lot of blue in the clouds, but I feel like it kind of adds, you know, like an extra element, like a little bit colder feeling. He shot this at 35mm f4 at 1/400 and 1600 ISO. So I feel like even if this was shot at a lower aperture, it could look quite cool. If you're low on the water like this and you shoot a lower aperture, you get really nice out of focus fall off like he has here, but it might even accentuate it a bit more and then make the surfer even pop a little bit more by being more in focus. And then that way, say if you shot at 2.8, you might only be at like 800 ISO, so you might have like a slightly cleaner image all around. I usually will just try and, if I've got a 1.4 lens, I'll try and shoot at 1.4, or if I've got a 1.8 for this sort of vibe. But it can be quite nice to shoot if you're just sitting out there and there's not much going on as far as waves coming through. Like this looks like it's quite a small day, a guy's riding a longboard. Then maybe just play with your settings in between sets, take a few frames. So you might shoot one at 1.8, you might shoot one at 5.6, you might shoot one at 8.0, and then later on you can have a look and get a real feel for what you like the look of best. And then next time you're out there, then you can just concentrating and shooting that style, whatever feels best to you. I would probably add a little bit more contrast to this, and maybe even a little bit more blacks to sort of get that moody sort of vibe going on. Nice. So that was the original there. That was our little update on the edit. All right, and then the shot's really cool. I like it. So yeah, it's done a great job with the sand in the foreground. It's kind of split things into thirds here. Epic wave framing composition is really, really cool. I feel like with composition, your positioning can make such a big difference. And the mainly what we want to see in this photo is in this middle third, because that's the wave, that's what we're there for. Whereas the third at the front is just the sand, the third at the back is just the sky. So I feel like in this one, the middle third is the smallest out of all of them. So if he was maybe just a little bit higher in the frame, then the higher he was in the frame, the more you would get of this middle third. So often it can be just the difference between bending your knees a little bit to get slightly lower, or standing on tiptoes, or often I'll find like a log and I'll stand on a log. And if you were a little bit higher, then you would have less of this whitewash as well, which is kind of maybe a little bit distracting. But yeah, overall, really, really cool shot. So I guess to give you an idea of what it might look like if you are if you're a little bit higher and the middle third was bigger, it would end up looking a little bit more balanced on the thirds. You wouldn't lose the width of the wave either. You'd just be gaining more in the middle from the high. But it would look like that. So it would look, I guess, a little bit more balanced. I feel like the sand is quite bright in this photo. So we could just add like a little graduated filter. And if we bring the exposure of that down, bring the highlights of that down, and then bring that up over the sand. Maybe even bring that down a little bit more. Then the sand's ending up like a little bit more balanced as far as the exposure for the rest of the image goes. So yeah, it's nice to have like a nice balanced exposure of your whole image. So I feel if you can, those graduated filters are so easy to use, it's really difficult to notice that you've done anything. But you can see without it, it makes like a real big difference. I feel like it's quite almost a little bit distracting when it's real bright like that. I mean, while you're at it, you could, maybe you might be like, oh, I might want to make the sand a little more orangey. So you'll throw like a little bit more yellow at the sand if you wanted to. Yeah, that looks cool. Really cool shot. When the waves are quite green like this, I quite often like to have a little play and see if we can make things a little bit bluer. So if you brought the temperature down, yeah, then the wave can end up quite blue. What that's done in turn is it's sort of made the sand like a little bit of a dull color, but we have already had that gradient on there, so we could just bring that sand back to how it was. Yeah, I don't know. The whitewashes ended up maybe a little bit blue, so the green was cool as it was. Maybe the green was better. Should we go back to that? Overall, look, the processing's good. It looks like he's been pretty light-handed on the edit, but it looks nice. Could maybe on the raw, could maybe use a adjustment brush. I'm not sure if we get much out of this here, because the JPEG you don't really have a lot of information to work with. But if you get an adjustment brush and you bring the exposure and the highlights down a little bit, then if there's any areas in the whitewash that are sort of blowing out, you can kind of like bring them back a little bit. And there's a little bit of info there. So yeah, that way you can get your overall exposure how you want it. That's generally what I do. I'd get the overall exposure how I wanted it, and then if there was things that were bothering me, I might go in and give them like a little touch up, and if something's blown out, I try and repair that. So that was the original, and then that was our little new edit. But yeah, cool shot all up. Really like it. All right, we're moving along to Costa. So I was going to have everyone's Instagram handles on the screen, but then for me to do that, I wasn't going to be able to have any of the Lightroom controls on the screen, so we had to make a little bit of a sacrifice there. But Costa's probably got my favorite Instagram handle I've seen for quite some time. It's closeouts on the head. I'm feeling it. So he sent me the RAWs and the JPEGs, which is real handy. So got a really cool fisheye shot here. So this is Costa's edited JPEG. So he straightened it up, which is cool. It's really hard when you're shooting fisheye because you're just holding with one hand off and above your head like that. So it's very, very difficult to have like a straight horizon. So he's fixed that horizon up, which is nice. Kind of warm things up here, which is really cool. Yeah, like it looks like he's sort of done it overall with the white balance. Because the original one is actually quite blue with like a little bit of magenta tone even, and then this one sort of ended up quite green with the more goldy tone to it, which is cool. You can actually do that just by using the split toning. So what the split toning does is it's just doing some extra toning either in the highlights or the shadows. So in this one, there's obviously like a little bit of golden light coming through. So when I'm doing split toning, what I like to do is I push the saturation all the way to 100. And then that way I can see exactly like what color I'm going with and how it's affecting the image. So we'd want to go up into the yellows, which is about there, around 47. So it has these little numbers here. They're kind of handy. You sort of end up knowing what you like in the split toning. Around somewhere around the 45 to 50 mark is kind of where the yellows are at. And then once you get that color dialed in, then you can just bring the saturation down till it looks natural. That one's actually, you can get quite a lot in. And then you can do that with the shadows as well. So if you wanted to have like still the wave to be quite blue, but then having some sort of gold coming into it, then the shadows would crank that up. I actually did this before, and I put it on to 17, I think. Around 210. Obviously that looks ridiculous at 100%. It's just got way too aqua, but then if you just have it so it's like a subtle tone, then you can actually change up the balance. So what that does is it's moving more of the yellows further into the highlights and even a little bit into the shadows, and then so you can move that up, so that's adding more yellows, like further deeper into you know, what's less highlighted, like that, and then you can add more blue. I kind of like, I think it looks kind of cool having it that way. But yeah, the way that Costa's done it is cool as well. He's just ended up with like a slightly sort of greener wave. So just couple, you know, there's many different ways you can do things in Lightroom. So let's just roll with, I don't know which one I like. I feel like that could even be a bit more golden. Maybe we could mess with the saturation. Heavy-handed. Sort of ended up with a slightly odd-looking sky. But anyway, let's go back to Costa's edit. So shot this ISO 200. We've got no info on the aperture and the focal length, which tells me it's probably a manual focus lens, which a lot of fisheyes are manual focus, which is fine. So they don't have any like electronic contacts in there, so you don't get the metadata info. But it's shot at 1/1000th of a second. So 1/1000th of a second is usually fast, you know, fast enough, especially for what I shoot. I don't usually shoot a lot of fisheye, so a lot of the things I shoot are a little bit more pulled back. So, and the wave isn't actually moving that fast in the frame what I'm shooting. Whereas you're shooting fisheye, this lip is falling over really, really quickly. So everything's a lot closer to the camera, so it seems like it's moving a lot faster because it's moving a lot more into the frame. So what you actually find is, you can see, well, it's a bit intense. We've actually got like a bit of motion blur in the top left corner here, because that part of the wave is moving really, really fast, and because this part is further away from the lens, you don't have any motion blur in it at all. It's nice and crisp. But yeah, so generally 1/1000th is fine for shooting like most focal lengths, but for fisheye, I would probably try and shoot a bit faster, maybe like 1/1500 would be safe. And then I almost feel like a lot of people, I'm not sure what Costa's set his focal length to, but this part of the wave here is really, really crisp, which is awesome. That's like the main part of the wave that we want to be crisp. The background is also pretty in focus, but then it sort of blurs away as we're coming more forward, closer to the camera. So I'm just thinking maybe if you're manual focusing, you could manual focus like a little bit closer to the camera, because you'll find that it's the close things that you'll notice that are out of focus, and then the further away things, you don't really notice them so much. But yeah, all up, it's a really cool shot. He's done well. He's right there in the tube. He's feeling it. I like it. Yes. We'll move on to his next one. So this is Costa's next shot, which is a really cool slow shutter water shot. So he's got his raw here, and this is often what happens when you shoot slow shutter shots. To have the shutter open that long, it lets in a lot of light, and it needs to be quite dark. Otherwise, yeah, there can be too much light. But he's done well. He's managed to pull back all the info out of the raw file. So there's no, nothing's really blowing out here. So there's nothing lost. If you're shooting in RAW, that's the one thing. If you're shooting in RAW versus JPEG, if you're shooting in RAW, there's just so much more information to play with later on. So it's nice, and yeah, you'd be amazed at what you can pull back. Like if you shot that as a JPEG, this info here is gone. There's no way it's coming back. Some of this info, yeah, you'd be struggling to pull it back. So yeah, he's done a good job shooting in RAW there. So yeah, I with slow shutters, like I was saying before, the thing that looks really, really cool is the curve of the wave with the slow shutter. You get that really super nice texture. It ends up like really nice and smooth. And I like what Costa's done here with the crop. And I'm sure that he knows that if he was maybe about 1 meter over this way, then he probably wouldn't have this little bit of slightly distracting shoulder of the wave there, and then this would have been bigger in the frame and probably not needing a crop. But yeah, like I was saying before, with water shots, positioning is really, really tough. Often a wave just pops up out of nowhere and you don't have time to move, so you just sort of get what you get. But in an ideal world, I'd say maybe if Costa was a little bit closer into the pocket there, then he might have had like a slightly cleaner image. When I shoot slow shutters, I usually like to shoot them where there's no background at all, because I feel like when you shoot slow shutter in a background, you end up with this kind of like odd blurred background, and often people don't really understand. So if that was just like sea or sky or something, it might be like a little less distracting. It looks like this is a cool spot there. Some kind of wedge off the rocks by the looks, which is pretty rad. What else have we got? Yeah, so I shot at ISO 100, 50 mil, f8, and 1/25th of a second. So I feel like you could maybe have just gone like a higher aperture. If you shot that around f11, then things probably would have been like a little bit more in control here as far as like the exposure goes. But yeah, you brought it back, so no biggie. And then often if you shoot like a higher, if you're shooting like a higher aperture, then you can be pretty prone to dust spots, which can be pretty pesky. So if I'm ever shooting slow shutter images, I'll usually try and clean my sensor the night before I'm going to go out. So the other thing you can do if you want to shoot slow shutters is just either go out earlier in the morning or stay out later at night when it gets darker. So if I'm aiming to shoot slow shutters, I'll be swimming out in the dark for sure. And then there's only really this like 10 to 15 minute window, which is like the magic time to shoot them. So yeah, maybe just being out a little bit earlier or staying out a little bit darker might be able to nail some conditions. But yeah, like I say, he's done well rescuing everything there, so all good. Okay, so next one we have, so this is the raw file, and then this is Costa's edit, the JPEG. Again, so this one, the reason that this raw file is a bit hot, a little bit blown out, is that he shot at aperture of 1.8 on like a real sunny day. So there's like a lot of light coming in from that large aperture, which has made things like a little bit blown out. Shooting at 1.8 can look really, really cool. You can see on Costa's edited one there, you can get like cool bokeh details on the shoulder, like he's got here. Really, really cool. But I find shooting at a low aperture up close like this can make things a little bit difficult to work out what's in focus. If you're shooting, this is probably the one time where maybe it would have been better to be positioned a little bit further away if you wanted to shoot low aperture like this. if this wave was like making up half of the frame instead of filling up the frame, then you would find that it would look like the whole wave was in focus because it's that much further away from the camera. But because we're quite full frame with this wave, it looks like we've got our focus on here on the foam ball, and this bit looks really cool. But then on the lip detail up here, we're like a little bit out of focus, and yeah, we've sort of lost focus here. Or I feel like overall, this wave probably might have looked a little bit better if it was shot at a higher aperture, if it was this close. So, and then obviously if we're at a higher aperture, we wouldn't have lost all this info. But yeah, again, he's done a great job of recovering it all. It's the awesomeness of shooting in RAW. We've got this little dark spot up here, which I'm not sure if that's from the lens or maybe it could be from the port. So if we bring that down, oh yeah, it is quite dark. First thing that I always do, he may have done this already as well, is go into the lens corrections and you enable profile corrections. And then, yeah, so that is after it's corrected, it's still like a little bit dark up in that corner. So not a big deal. It might just be like the edge of the housing. I'm not too sure. But yes, mental wave, really, really sick. So he's done well, and he's right up in there. So yeah, so it's hard to tell how big that wave is. It could be 2 foot or it could be 6 foot. But it's, yeah, super hollow. So it's sick shot. I like it. Oh, one other thing I was thinking is, so if we reset that. So shot this at ISO 100, 55mm f1.8 at 1/2000th of a second. So I think he's probably shot this in manual. But if I'm shooting like a low aperture like this, I'll shoot in the aperture priority with a minimum shutter speed of 1/1000th of a second. So what that means is it's almost like shooting in manual, but the shutter speed can't go down below 1/1000th, but it can go above. So what probably would have happened here if he was shooting in aperture mode is the shutter speed might have gone to 1/8000th of a second, and then we might have got like a slightly better composed image. So it's just because I find when you're shooting surfing, you might be shooting a left one way and then a right come and you spin around, and the light's never going to be exactly the same on the left and the right. So if you're shooting manual, it can be quite difficult to dial in like a perfect exposure, and quite often you can end up getting it really, really wrong. Or if you shoot in the aperture priority, and then you have ISO on auto, and then you have a minimum shutter speed, I would say usually 1/1000th of a minute minimum shutter speed for shooting surfing, then your shutter speed can go up, but it can't go down. So that way you'll sort of end up getting more balanced exposures. If I was shooting fisheye, I might do a minimum shutter speed of 2000, depending if there was enough light. But yeah, really, really cool shot. So we'll move along. And then we have Lou. This is my buddy Lou. Their Instagram is LuluDPhoto. Runs a good gram. So Lou loves a bit of ocean photography, and she also lives in my town. So she's got a couple of shots here. So she's sent me, not the RAWs, but she has sent me unprocessed versions of the RAWs and then processed versions of the RAWs. So this is her processed version there. So we've got really cool perspective, like quite high. I like the high angle. It looks really cool how it's just ocean, there's nothing else going on. So she's done well there. I don't know where she's gone. She climbed up a big rock or something maybe. She's done a little crop on it too, which I quite like. As I was saying before, I don't really like anything that's like a little bit distracting that's close to the edge of the frame. So Lou has given us a crop. She's cropped out that wave down the bottom, and she's cropped out that little bit of whitewash up the top. So yep, just ticking the boxes on the crop there. I quite like what she's done with the processing. The raw here looks like it's got quite a lot of magenta in it. So she's balanced that out nicely. I think, yeah, technically it's a cool shot. I think maybe the only thing that's letting it down a little is the waves are a little bit fluffy. So, and then it has kind of like this lip line that's like a little bit crooked. I mean, sometimes the waves just aren't great. So you make do with what you've got. But I think what could look really cool from this perspective would be if the waves weren't great, maybe you could think about shooting like unbroken swell sort of coming in. Just like could look really cool from that high perspective, having like just a nice clean swell line coming in. But yeah, all up, it's a cool shot. I like it. So we'll move along. So this is Lou's unprocessed version, and then that's a processed one, which is really cool. So this looks like a beach I know well, where I was on the weekend. So yeah, this is a great water shot, though. I think positioning's pretty spot on. Quite like the processing, looks cool. Processing's an interesting one. I feel like this is almost a feminine process. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that, but it sort of looks quite dreamy and light, which I guess is probably more Lou's style. I would probably throw like a few blacks at that as well, actually. I already played with that before. That was Lou's original. So what I did was I chucked like a bunch more black at it because I felt like it maybe looked a little bit flat. And there's really cool colors going on here, but I feel like we could just accentuate this a bit. So yeah, we will put those blacks in. So again, we're just holding down Option, moving the black slider down, and then we're seeing if there's anything that's clipping in the blacks. So clipping means that it's so black that we've lost the information. But yeah, there's nothing's really clipping. Oh yeah, there's a little bit clipping in you can see the trees there's clipping, so we'll bring that up so it's not clipping. And then we'll do the same thing with the whites, so we'll bring those up. There we go. A little bit clipped at the top there, so we'll stop there. I feel like there's nice color in the sky, but I feel like the spray here on top of the waves like a little bit blue. If we do like a little check with the spot tool, yep. So that's telling us so again, this is a kind of one of those situations where you're trying to balance the light between light that's got sun on it, light that doesn't. So, but that's showing us that it could be quite a lot warmer. But that looked way too extreme, and I liked how the water looked blue and how Lou processed it. So I'd probably just warm that up a teeny little bit, so it's still remaining like that nice blue vibe, but it's maybe looking a little bit more neutral. And I feel like it's got a little green tinge to it, so we'll bring the tint up a little bit, and then. So this is also going to help out our sky. So any color in the sky is going to appreciate like a little bit more pink, a little bit more yellow. And then we've lost a bit of sky detail there. So what we could do there is bring the exposure down a teeny little bit on a graduated filter, and bring the highlights down a teeny bit. So I'm just bringing them down. I'm going for 10 and 0.10 and 0.10, just a teeny little bit. And then we'll just bring that across like that. You could, I mean, if you wanted to, you could also like warm the sky up a touch, which I'm going to just for fun. There we go. I feel like maybe we could bring the exposure up a teeny little bit. Even I'm going to go all out with a teeny touch of saturation. There we go. So as far as the processing goes, that was before. So, and then that was after. So the main thing is bringing the blacks down and bringing the whites up just makes things pop a little bit more. Just makes things look like a little bit more crisp, I think. And then, so Luz shot this at ISO 160, 44.1 millimeter. That's very accurate. Luz shoots Fuji, by the way. So Fuji really gets down to the millimeter on the focal length. I like it. Aperture of 3.6 and 1/250th of a second. So I probably would have shot this a little bit of a faster shutter speed. Generally, I shoot about 1,000th of a second if I can. If there's not much light or there's like low light, probably 500th would be kind of the minimum. And because you can see there's like a little bit of motion blur going on up here. It's not super noticeable. I think she's got away with it fine. But yeah, I think ideally, because she's only at ISO 160, she's still got quite a lot of ISO. I'd be super comfortable shooting 400 ISO, no worries, or maybe even like up to 800. So yeah, I feel like we could get that to 500th or 800th. If it's kind of like lowish light, 800th is kind of where I like to sit, and then over 1,000 is good light. I'm gonna slide a little bit more blacks into that one still. I reckon we can make that pop. Oh, there we go. Nice. Oh, so if you're on Lightroom and you want to see before and after, there's like the little backslash key, which is above the return enter key on a Mac. I'm not sure it's on the PC, but you just click that and then that'll show you the before and after. So it's real easy to see where you're at and what you've done. All right, and then we have, this looks like the main beach, so same spot that Diego had his super chaotic main beach shot that I liked before. So it's like a nice morning sort of a vibe. Really cool light. So that's the unprocessed, and then this is the processed one. We've got a bit of a ready vibe going on. I like the processing. All up, it's got a cool vibe. Again, the waves may be a little bit fluffy. I think I think technically Lou's photography is really good. I think maybe she could benefit by chasing a slightly better quality surf. Yeah, sorry, that was where I've been playing with that before. So there we go. So that's where we're at. So that's Lou's processed one. So then we're gonna, I think we're probably, again, it maybe looks like a little bit flattish. So we could just add a few extra whites. And then we'll add some blacks. I'll even bring the exposure up slightly. I feel like when you bring the exposure up, then you get to add more blacks in. And I feel like the more blacks you can add in, the more pop it has. Obviously, you don't want to lose any information, but if you can bring your exposure up, jam a few more blacks in, it's looking pretty cool. Sky sort of ended up a little bit blown out, so again, we might just bring the exposure and the highlights of that down a little bit. You could throw a little cheeky bit of extra yellow in that sky if you wanted to milk it a little bit. I think overall could just do with a little bit of extra contrast. That's looking pretty cool. I think even we could throw a little bit of extra saturation in that too, just to give it that, really accentuate that sort of morning light we've got going on. I love how she's captured this spray here. It looks so nice against like the dark contrast of the rocks. It's really cool. We've got a little guy down there giving us a bit of scale. That's cool. So we've got a before, after. Yeah, so I think just adding that, adding the extra blacks and the extra whites giving that sky a little bit of a tickle up, and then adding a little bit extra contrast. Again, you can see what that dehaze does on this, so we'll slide that up a little bit. Yeah, I feel like it's looking good. Looking nice. I think one thing that we could have done in this image is maybe position everything a little lower in the frame. So I feel like the rocks and the sky and the wave are all, they're really, really interesting. And then maybe these sort of lines of whitewash at the front aren't so interesting. So we're obviously not able to do it, but say if it was just framed up without that first whitewash, something like that. But then we'd have more sky. So let's just undo that. All right, moving right along. All right, nice work. Then now we have Michael. So that looks like Morro Rock in California. Epic. This is a really cool drone shot. I like how he shot it in portrait. You don't really see many drone shots, and I'm presuming he shot in portrait unless he cropped it in portrait. But I know some of the drones you can rotate the lens into portrait, which is really cool. So yeah, it's done really well. The waves look cool. The rock looks amazing. I feel like the sky up top here is looking a little bit muddy. It's down the bottom looks nice. It's got that little color gradient going on, but the top is sort of, it might be, sometimes those drone lenses can have quite bad vignetting. So let's have a quick look. I feel like if we bring the exposure of that sky up, because generally the sky wouldn't get darker as it went to the top, so that should look a bit more natural. So what we do is we'll go to 0.2. So the cool thing about gradients is if you do like a subtle gradient like that, like 0.2, it's not making a big difference. You can just keep dropping more and more down. So you just keep clicking, and you can so I'm doing smaller and smaller ones because I feel like the top is really it's a bit dark, and even you can do them on an angle because that top corner there, maybe even that top corner. It's looking a bit better. I'm gonna get in there and do one more. Bring that one up until I'm feeling it. Yeah, I feel like that already is looking a lot cleaner. If you want to make I feel like this would make a really cool print. I'm sure someone that lives at that beach or loves that beach would love to have this print. It's done really well for composition. It looks cool. And yeah, like I said before, I love that the perspective of having it as a shot in portrait. So you could warm the sky up even more with the color gradient as well, because it sort of ends up quite white. So maybe we might just add a little bit of extra color just to kind of get down to match. So it kind of flows a little bit better from what's going on down the bottom there, instead of going into the white. Yeah, so that was before. That was after. Yeah, I think it ended up being a lot cleaner image by getting rid of that slightly muddy sky. I love the little lines of the waves hitting the shore there. It looks really cool. Yeah, it's an epic shot. I like it. All right, moving along. Oh, this is a really cool lineup. So Michael's just sent me the edited JPEGs. I don't have the raws, but I've made like a copy of them. So to make a copy of something in Lightroom, all you do is you just right click on it or control click, and then go up to create virtual copy. So then that makes another copy of it. So what you can do then is say if you wanted to do the same photo in color or black and white, you can just process it in 2 different versions. Or if you wanted to process 2 totally different versions and then see how they look, then you can compare them. I'll often do that if I'm shooting a wedding. I'll edit the whole wedding in color. Then I'll just select all the files, create virtual copies, and then make them all into black and white. And then that way it's a real quick way to make a whole black and white of everything. Okay, so we've got this really cool lineup here. Epic looking spot. Love the lighthouse. That's so rad. So I really like the composition. Again, he shot it in portrait, which is something that I would never do. Maybe I should. I feel like the processing is, I feel like it was maybe like a cloudy day and we'll sort of try to add like a bit of warmth at the top, but I'm not too sure if it's that convincing. I think maybe it might almost be better if it was just embrace the fact that it was like kind of a dull day and it's like a moody sort of a vibe. So I think it's fine. This little dark cloud that's right on the edge, I'm finding that's like a little bit distracting. So that's sort of pulling my eye up the top there. So I would probably, I'd either crop it out or I'd do something with some filters. We've got a bit of room that we could crop it out. We're not really, so if we're cropping that, we're not really losing, we're not really losing anything. All we're losing is what's on the side here. So it's not a big deal to crop that out, I think. And then, yeah, I feel like that looks a lot better. I'm not going to be able to do anything with this because it's the JPEG and I think the information is gone. But if we had the raw, I feel like we could rescue some of the information out of this wave here. Like the highlights have been blown out. And so the way you do that would be you just grab an adjustment brush, which is this little wand, zero that out. I'd bring the exposure down a little bit. I'd bring the highlights down a little bit. This probably isn't going to do anything because it's a JPEG and I think that info is gone. Yep. Oh, we got a teeny little bit. But yeah, if you did this to the raw, you'd find that you'd get like so much info back. You'd be able to rescue all those highlights. Because again, overall, yeah, no, that looks, there's nothing coming back there. Yeah, you want to get the overall, the exposure of the image looks spot on, but it's just that whitewash sort of detail is lost. So I probably want to brush that in. I feel like the whole thing could probably be a bit more contrasty. A bit more blacks. But yeah, like I say, it's quite hard to kind of rescue that. What is that? Is it like a? Oh, it's a rock. So, but yeah, cool composition overall. I really like what he's done there, and yeah, that lighthouse just adds extra element there. Then we have really nice water shot. Feeling it. It's really cool. So backlit. So the surf is silhouetted, but I love this. I think when you can see like all the surfer's limbs, it's cool because he's not like a black blob. You can make out exactly what's going on here. So that looks really nice. I wouldn't really worry too much about him being silhouetted. It's done well with the birds. Are cool. Got a little water drop there, which has made this bokeh up the top, which looks cool as well. Yeah, all up, that's a really nice shot. What will we do with that? I made a few notes. Let's refer. I'm wondering, the wave is quite sort of greeny, browny, which I'm sure is what it was like on the day. But we could just try and see what that looks like if we cool that down a little bit. Yeah, we could try and cool that a little bit. I think that looks nice. I think as well, when you shoot backlit images, you don't really get a lot of color in the raw file, and so I feel like Michael's maybe throwing like a little bit of saturation added to compensate for the fact that, you know, like a lot of color gets stripped out when it is shot backlit. But I feel like he's ended up with really quite intense green up top here. So we couldn't really use the HSL panel to take care of that green because there's a lot of green in the wave, so it would strip the color out of the wave. So in that case, you might just give it a little brush over with a saturation adjustment brush. So if you want to see where you are brushing, if you push O, then that shows you the red is the area that you've adjusted. And then you can change how much feather is on your brush, the size of your brush. I have a Mac mouse and I just move up and down. That makes the brush bigger and smaller, but you can get in there manually and do that with your slider. So you can see that's a large brush there, and it's got a big feather. So the feather is the outer circle, and you can see if you bring the feather down, the outer circle comes really small. So what that means is that brush is going to have a harsh edge, and then that's going to have a really soft edge. So if I'm brushing something on like a surf image, I like to use like a real soft edge, otherwise it's going to be pretty obvious. So we'll brush that in, and then we'll bring that saturation down a little bit, just to make it so that green isn't really grabbing your eye, because I feel like it's not something that's, you know, adding to the image. It's maybe just something that's like grabbing your attention. And then you could sort of accentuate the color in the wave a little bit with the adjustment brush as well. So maybe if we brought the saturation up, just give that a little brush in. And if you want to see what difference you've made with the adjustment brush, there's this little switch down the bottom, so you can toggle that on or off. So that was only real subtle. Obviously, if we went super wild, you can see, you can toggle it on and off and see what you've done. Even actually, I just jammed that right up to accentuate it, but I quite like the look of how it is. I really like Michael's composition that he's done here. He's got the surfer like nice and low in the frame, pulled back, so you can see like it's obviously a really great wave. You can see like the whole wave. It's epic. And he must have his focal point a little bit lower, which is cool. He's obviously gone out to try and shoot something like this. So yeah, all up, it's a really cool shot. I don't think we really mess with that too much. What did we do? Yeah, that was the original. Just kind of took that. The wave's still green on the edge I did, but it's sort of taken that. It's got a bit of a brown tinge going on through this bit here, and yeah, just cooling it down a little bit. Just took a little bit of that brown out, and obviously took a bit of color out of the sky. But that was cool shots. I enjoyed those. Then we got Nico. I presume it's Nico. This guy's Nico. Well, this is a really epic lifestyle shot. Such a cool vibe. He's done really well there. So he's shot this at 1/20th of a second. There's not a lot of light. Must have shot with a manual focus lens. Interesting. Not a lot of light, so he's just done that handheld, but it looks crisp enough. Everything looks crisp. There's maybe a teeny little bit of motion blur in the guys, but it's not noticeable. And yeah, and he's kept the ISO as low as he can at 1000, so he's done well there. This is actually his. So this is Nico's edited shot, and then this is the raw. So he hasn't really done a huge amount to it. You can see he's put his lens correction on. You can kind of see that's taken like a little bit of the warp out of it. I find when you've got something that's like a overpowering, strong light source in the image that's one color, it ends up making the whole image the opposite of that color. So because it's got this real strong yellow zone here, it's made everything really blue. The blue really works in this image because obviously blue is like a cold color, so it works. But I would probably, I'm just going to work on Nico's edited file, but I'd probably just warm that up a teeny bit. Obviously, we don't want to make it look warm, but I feel like we can maybe make that snow like a little bit. Snow will be like a little bit whiter. But yeah, other than that, can't really fault the image. I think I just really did that just so I felt like I had put my hand in it somehow. But yeah, really, really cool lifestyle shot. Really like it. I like he's in like a real light-handed image. But yeah, so that was Nico's edit, and then we just added. For some reason, if you on the JPEG, if you move the sliders around, it almost messes with the exposure a little bit. So we could maybe throw a little bit more black in there, just to balance that out. Didn't really do a lot, did I? All right, moving along. So this is, I really like the shot. It's so cool with the shipwreck. So this is Nico's raw, and then this is his edited file. I feel like this is, so there's like a little, in the raw, there's like a little bit of color in the sky, but he's had a real go at accentuating that. But what we've ended up with, is it's quite sort of green up in this top corner here, and it's ended up looking a little bit unnatural, I think, in the top part of the frame here. But so, like I said before, if something's too green, we can add like a little bit of extra red or magenta in the tint, and then this image as well is going to appreciate some magenta because it's going to, it's like a sunset, sunrise sort of vibe. So I feel comfortable throwing some more magenta at that. So if we just keep that rolling along, yeah, that's looking way better. Nice, and that's got a nice sort of more of a balanced, so let's have a look. So that's what it was, and then that's how I made it. So yeah, it just looks like a lot more of a natural sort of a sunset. We've got like a little issue in this top corner. It's not a very hard JPEG to work with, but it's ended up with, I'm sure if you did that on the raw, you probably wouldn't have ended up with this, but it's got like a little bit of like this odd kind of bluey bit up there. If you want to be real picky, you can go up there and try and fix it out. So it's too blue, so what we do would be add like a little bit more yellow to it. Just that top corner. Might even be a bit heavy-handed. Yeah, I feel like that's fixed it okay. But yeah, overall, I love the shot. I love the vibe of it. Man, it's really, really speaks to me, this one. I guess one thing is with pulled back surfing photos like this, the better the wave, the better the photo. So this is a really, really cool shot, and I'm sure a magazine would love to give it a run. But I feel like if you went back to this spot and got like really nice, clean offshore waves where it's like a nice peeling wave or whatever, that yeah, you'd end up on a cover shot for sure. So I would be looking at the maps and really trying to revisit this shot, revisit this spot if you could. The foreground element's really cool as well. Yeah, it's done a great job with the composition for sure. I guess, yeah, there's not really too much of a change other than maybe trying to go there when the waves were a little bit better. But yeah, as it is, really cool shot, epic. I like it. Definitely go back there. And then we have these this water shot. So this is the raw. Is it actually? All right. That is the raw. Sorry, I had a little fiddle with it earlier. That's the raw, and then this is Nico's edit. So quite an interesting edit. It's the wave naturally is quite blue, but he's gone with quite a green sort of a vibe, and then really brought up these shadows a lot, so you can see the surface space, which is it's amazing that so it's shot at 200 ISO, so there's a lot of information to work with. So the lower ISO that you shoot at, the more information there's going to be in the file to work with. So what that means, if you shoot at 100 ISO and you need to bring up some info in the shadows, or 200 ISO in this case, you can and still have quite like a clean image that we've got here. But if that was shot, say if this was shot at 1000 ISO and you tried to bring up that info, it would just end up super noisy on the shadow detail. Yeah, I think the actual action shot's epic. Like he's done well. His waves are good, beautiful positioning of the surfer. Looks like a great spot. If I was going to say anything, I'd say the top of the waves maybe being choked a little bit. There's quite a lot of extra room down the bottom and not a lot by the top, which I guess Nico's addressed a bit in his crop. He sort of cropped a little bit of the bottom out. A lot of people say to have the focal point a little bit higher in the frame, because the worst thing that could happen would be that if your focal point was low in the frame and it focused on this bit of water in the front, this bit of water was in focus and the surfer was out of focus, that would be heartbreaking on an epic shot like this. But what can happen then is it just ends up, you're trying to put the surfer in the focal point. So if your focal point's higher in the frame, then your whole thing ends up higher in the frame. So if the focal point was lower in the frame, it just means that you have to point the camera higher. You can't just have the wave in the middle of the frame, still you have to have it lower in the frame. So I feel like, maybe one thing that you could possibly improve on this one would be to move have had like a little bit of extra room up the top there. But I mean, who knows? Things that happen pretty quickly in the ocean. This wave was bearing down on Nico, so maybe he was just swimming for his life and just composed as best as he could, as quickly as he could. But yeah, he's done well to nail it. He's only shot it at f2.8. But yeah, the surfer, if we look 1:1, the surfer's super crisp. So he's done well on nailing his focal point. I would probably have, if the waves were this good, I would probably have played it a little bit safer and shot that at a higher aperture, because he's shot at 1/4,000th of a second. So anything above 2,000ths of a second, you don't need to go faster than that. So you could shoot like a high aperture and half the shutter speed and still had like a real crisp shot. It hasn't been an issue here. He's nailed it. But yeah, just for me, I probably would have shot that. I would have, in waves like this, I probably would have shot at 7.1, just to, then I know if I had focused accidentally on this bit here for some reason, then the surf is still going to be sharp. We have a little go at processing this. So yeah, Nico's gone quite a green sort of a vibe. I probably would, so we'll just bring the exposure up for starters so we can see what's going on. I probably would have actually cooled this down a little bit and sort of embraced the fact that it was real nice blue water. We'd need to pull, if we wanted to see that surfer, we'd need to pull the shadows up. It's quite good because when you're moving the shadows, it's actually not moving much other than the surfer. Throw a few more blacks in there. So his wetsuit's clipping black, but that's okay. Maybe make that even the whole thing a little bit brighter. So when I'm making it brighter, what's happening is I'm losing all this info out of the sky, and I've lost like a lot out of this, out of the wave there. But I'm kind of not too fussed because I know I can easily bring that back, because if you look, everything on this side's like a bit blown out. So if we were to grab a graduated filter, bring the exposure down, bring the highlights down, we're going to bring them down quite a lot, 0.3 for the exposure point, and -10 for the highlights, and then we can just bring that across, because there's nothing, that everything in that area is sort of blown out. So we might do that one like that, and then we might just do a sideways one also. And then we'll put a lot of that info back. And then, like I was saying before, if you wanted to brush, you can even like use a brush and like brush back a lot of that info, so you can rescue any of that information. So we've got that back okay. Might even brush a little bit more in. That's looking more like it. So I might bring those blacks even a bit more. So we can also bring the highlights down, the overall highlights of the image. So that's going to help anything that's blowing out. So if you bring that right down, you can kind of see it's rescued a lot, but it kind of gives us this weird look. So we want to back that off slowly. I don't really ever like to, I'm not really the sort of person that pushes any slider to like 100. I feel like if you push it to 100, you've pushed it too far. Yeah, and then I feel like we could probably add a little bit more saturation overall to that. And I feel like that's looking pretty nice. And then if you wanted to see more of the surface face, you could grab an adjustment brush again, and that's real crisp. He's done a great job there. Might want to bring the exposure up slightly, bring the shadows up a little bit, and then just give him a little brush on the face. Guy's doing his best tube writing face. We could bring that up. So that way, all we've affected is just his face. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, then we can maybe crop it a teeny little bit to get rid of so much at the bottom there. All right, so that's Nico's edit. That was my edit. They're both quite different. Both look good. Don't know which one I like. But yeah, sick shot. Those are all three really cool shots. I like them. And then we have, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Steen, maybe? Steen actually bought my first ever water housing off me, which was cool to get that a new home. I'm not sure if he shot this with it or not. Maybe he did. And so this shot's really cool as well. It's kind of similar to Diego's one, where it's really just showing you the chaos of like a city beach break. I feel actually scared for my own safety even just looking at this photo. I love how he's got this one board coming through right in the foreground. That's epic. I would be wearing a helmet if I wasn't shooting out there. Pretty cool. Has like a little bit of bokeh going on these bits, out of focus bits on the whitewash. It looks really, really nice. How many surfers we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 surfers in a frame. Yeah, it's epic. So he's done a great job there. It's a really cool capture. And I think maybe the processing is potentially a little bit heavy-handed. It's quite dark in the corners, so we've got like quite a heavy vignette. And I feel like that's just sort of like this bit through here, which could be just like a nice blue sky like that. It's ended up quite dirty looking maybe. We don't. This is just a JPEG, so we don't really have a shot of seeing it or what it would look like without that. But I'd say, yeah, you might be able to get like a cleaner image. And then same with the sky here. It's ended, you know, like it's nice sort of light blue on the bottom, but it's ended up quite dark. And I feel like it might be a little bit distracting overall. It might just be like a cleaner image without that sort of the darker images, darker edges, sorry. But yeah, cool image all around though. I really like it. I think it's quite hard to do much to it with that extra sky, but with the like sort of darker sky going on. But I feel like we could just get like a little bit. We'll just, if we do a graduated filter for the bottom, what we're going to do is we're only going to affect the bottom of the image. So maybe like a little bit of extra saturation through get a bit more color in the water. It's quite nice. And then maybe just a little bit of extra contrast. But yeah, nice, cool shot. And then we have a really nice longboarding shot. So there's a land shot, cool minimal sort of a vibe, just the ocean and sky is really nice. A minimal vibe looks really cool for longboarding, I think. I guess one thing that could have made this even more minimal and even more simple would have been just to be positioned a little bit higher, and then you wouldn't have got any of the whitewash. So if it was just the surfer on the wave and the ocean and the sky, it could look really cool. But I think Stan is from, what does it say? This is Orewa. So just sometimes at some beaches you just can't get high. So you just kind of got to do the best with what you can. I had a ladder back in the day, and would climb up the ladder to go be able to be like a little bit higher, and you kind of get like a cleaner perspective at beaches, especially the West Coast beach breaks in New Zealand. If it's low tide at a West Coast beach break, the tide goes out so far that you've got to walk pretty much to the sand, and then the surfers are out so far, but then there's so many lines of whitewash in front of them. So yeah, if you want to commit and take like a ladder down the beach, that could be a secret weapon. So yeah, but I like how it's real, just clean and minimal. I think it's maybe a little bit flat overall, so I would probably bring the exposure up, so we'll make that a little bit brighter. We'll add like a bit more contrast to it. And then we'll put some, bring it on a cloudy day, bringing the exposure up of images on a cloudy day, and then bringing the blacks in is like a nice way to get like a lot more sort of contrast to your image. And then it's looking quite green, so we could cool that down a little bit. And then maybe add a little bit more magenta to it as the tint, just to make it like a little bit more neutral. Then we had the dehaze slider. It's kind of cheating, but we'll give it a whirl. Throw a little bit of dehaze at it. Yeah, nice. I think overall that's a good improvement. I think, not sure what we got here. Is it might be a bird, or I can't tell if that's I think it might be a bird, but because I can't tell it's a bird, I'm like, what is that? It's like a little bit distracting. So I would probably just go full minimal vibes and just get rid of that. So a little spot removal, and that should take care of that one pretty easily. There we go. And then we're ISO 200, 400 mil, 7.1, 1000. Yeah, settings are all spot on. So yeah, it's done well. So that was the original edit, and then that was our little zhuzh up. Maybe we might even on a cloudy day, I feel like you need to add quite a bit of extra saturation to make it so looks a bit more lifelike. Otherwise, they just end up like a little bit dull. So I'm up to plus 19 on the saturation. But yeah, I feel like we'll just come on a little bit. Nice. And right, this is a cool shot. So if I sneak into Steen's file name, you can see this one's shot at Piha. And yeah, Piha's quite cool because you can walk right around the rocks and you can be in line with where people are surfing, even be beyond where they're surfing if you wanted to, and shoot sort of back. But it gives you that real nice side-on angle, which is pretty unique and quite hard to get it at a lot of other spots. This is a really cool shot. Yeah, waves look good. It's quite nicely processed. He's quite shadowy, but I'm okay with that. I mean, you could. This is just a JPEG again, so I'm not sure if we'll be able to get anything out of that. But if we, oops, that's not the right thing to do. We could see if we can maybe brush his face a little bit and get a little bit more detail out there. JPEG's not giving us a lot of love. If that was the raw file, you could probably get like quite a bit more info. Yeah, that's just ending up like a white blob. So scrap that idea. But yeah, like I say, on the raw, if that was only shot at 200 ISO, there's going to be a lot to work with there. So you'd be able to get like a lot more back of his face there. You just bring the overall shadows up a little bit. Even that's bringing like a little bit more out of his face there. Bring that contrast up a bit. It's quite a nice color in the wave. You could even, I might even cool that down slightly, make everything a little bit bluer. And a little extra saturation. So it's actually already pretty saturated down here, so I probably wouldn't get too heavy-handed. One thing I'd probably say is, if this was shot at Piha is like got super amazing scenery. There's massive, giant rocks right on the beach. Line rocks, pretty epic. I don't even know how big it is. It'd be 100-meter high rock, I'd say. And it would be cool to shoot some stuff that had at Piha that had a bit more context of where it was. This is a really cool photo, but this could be, I guess it could be anywhere. So you could probably capture what's going on in the image just as nicely, but then maybe give a little bit more context of what's going on. So it might be shooting. The cool thing about Piha is you can walk so far up and down around the side of the rocks to really, you've got like a lot of scope to be able to position yourself, so you can change your composition and add in elements or take away elements. So yeah, that could be kind of cool to maybe shoot like a little bit more pulled back, make the landscape maybe the hero of the shot, and then the wave obviously will still look epic in it. But a wave can look epic if it's big or small in the frame, and then yeah, the landscape can make a big difference. But yeah, it's a really cool shot all around. I like it. I'm feeling it. And I think, folks, that is the last image. I guess we'll have a little look. That's before and after. Didn't really do too much. Cooled it down a little bit, but yeah, it's a cool shot. So hopefully everyone enjoyed that and got a little bit out of it and learned something. But feel free to find me a question in the comments if there's anything else you wanted to know. And everyone that sent through their images, check your inbox tomorrow and I'll fire you through a pack of my Lightroom presets and you can give them a whirl, see if you like them. All right, I am going to sign out. Take it easy. Good night.